All right. So today we're going to have a hard conversation, nuanced conversation, unpleasant conversation. Today we're going to talk about Cesar Chavez and what has been going on over the past couple weeks about him and specifically Dolores Huerta accusing him of sexual abuse and rape. Uncomfortable topics for sure. But I want to offer a perspective here that I think might help place you, the individual, in the world that we are living in with a little bit of ease, maybe slight discomfort. I don't know. This is just the position that I take being a student of history. If you don't already know, Cesar Chavez was a political activist. He helped found the farmers union, the biggest farmers union in the United States. Specifically, a lot of activism in California, expanding beyond California also, but a lot of strikes, with the farmers. Complicated individual, even before this. He gets touted. I mean, you have a Cesar Chavez Street almost in every corner of the country, every big metropolitan city at least. And he, in a lot of ways, like Martin Luther King, gets touted as a big civil rights, workers' rights, mainly actually, more so workers' rights, in terms of union building, and a big voice to Mexican Americans, Hispanics, the working class. And some of his work has been monumental and pivotal, integral to the development of labor unions as they stand today. Super outspoken, unapologetic in a lot of ways, complicated, like I said. A lot of people don't know, but Cesar Chavez was not as pro-immigration as you might think. Hard to say in this political climate where he would stand in terms of political affiliations. I'm convinced that he would probably be anti-billionaire and oligarch corporations. But I also, considering the fact that he also had a big problem with illegal immigration, and more specifically the accusations that the CIA was deliberately sending in illegal immigrants to bust the strikes. Recently, Dolores Huerta, who was essentially his partner in crime in regards to his political work, recently Dolores has accused him of abuse. She specifically talks about two children that she had with him, from the product of his abuse. And there have been other instances, other women that have talked about his abuse. It has brought up a lot of very important conversations that I believe we should be addressing with nuance and with delicacy. Now, you just heard all of that, and it maybe your instinct is that I'm going to be a Cesar Chavez apologist. And that actually couldn't be further from the truth. I have seen a lot of things online. And you know what, to be honest, the spaces that I frequent online have all pretty much been on brand with themselves, right? The left side of politics has, really praised Dolores Huerta for her bravery and her outspokenness. And they've been very quick. I pulled up this article here. They've been very quick to change names of schools. You're probably going to see a lot of effort in these big places to start renaming schools, streets, what have you, to slowly take away his name from the public view. To that, I say, yeah. I mean, sure, it makes sense. I'd like to point out the fact that I'd like for there to be consistency, right? If there's going to be a Cesar Chavez name erasure, then, at the very least, I think that Andrew Jackson schools and all those things, but I was zoned to Andrew Jackson in Houston, and it did get changed. So not to say that there aren't those efforts. I just want consistency across the board. The right wing part of the world online is quick to do the, don't believe women until there's proof, and are starting to already call Dolores Huerta a liar. Powerful men are getting brought down, and they want to erase these images, and essentially the tropes to say just don't believe women whenever they accuse somebody that has some notoriety, some power, some semblance of goodwill. So everybody's been pretty much on brand, and I don't think I fall in either of those camps. It doesn't surprise me because I don't have a huge stake in who he was as a person. Not like a Martin Luther King, for example. Martin Luther King was also extremely complicated. Not, despite what he is known for and his activism and, the product of his character, he was also deeply flawed. And when I found that out, when I dug deeper into who he was as a person, I too was very heartbroken at the fact that he wasn't just the shining image of civil rights leadership that he gets painted out to be. However, I've gone through an evolution as a person. When I speak about Martin Luther King specifically, him not being the perfect version of what I thought he would be actually made me feel eventually like my flaws, whatever they may be, don't have to stop me from creating impact in the world. Now, disclaimer. I'm only using Martin Luther King as an example here, as somebody that when the veneer of their image got pulled back a little bit, I was equal parts heartbroken and then felt more reassured that people that make bad decisions can still ultimately do good in the world. Martin Luther King has never been accused of rape or sexual misconduct or abuse. So we're talking about something completely different. Cesar Chavez, if he did what he did, I think that his name should come with a huge asterisk in conversation, in academia, in social circles, in the labor unions, in general, in history, in the history books, it should come with an asterisk. I think it's important to realize that I can't think of any person in history that has propelled society forward in a huge stepping stone way that hasn't had a character flaw. Some really deep character flaws, some smaller. Okay? So I think it's important to realize that. But I believe that in cases like this, I care less about tearing down the man. And that's not me saying that I don't think that his image shouldn't be tarnished. I think his image is going to be tarnished. And I think he made decisions to tarnish his own image. And I think in terms of his legacy, there's nothing that he can do about it, obviously, because he's passed. But also, it's his own doing. And the consequences and what happens to his name are consequences of his own actions. I have no problem with a huge asterisk in his name. I have no problem with street names getting taken down. I have no problems with murals getting repainted. No problem with that at all. What I do have a problem with is co-opting a movement to a person. I have a huge problem with that. It's important to note, he may have spearheaded that movement. And you can even go as far as to say that without him and his decisions, the movement would not have existed. And the movement would not have transcended and pushed through all of the barriers that it pushed through. You can say that. He could be an integral part of the farmers' unions in Southwest America. 100%. However, we should not feel the need to tear down the movement or erase the importance of that structure, of those unions, of the work that's already been done, simply because we find out new information about this man. There are so many people that have contributed to that movement that trying to delegitimize the movement itself only because of the man who was the face of it is doing an injustice to not only the people that movement helped, but more importantly, the idea of what that movement represented. It's very hard to reconcile with this because it's very difficult to look at a Martin Luther King and say something like, well, if I find out that he's a horrible human being, like, I'm not going to look at civil rights the same. But it shouldn't be that way, right? It's easy for right-wing media to say, look at the BLM co-founders, or, you know, that whole scandal that happened where they ended up, you know, buying these big-ass houses in California. No, those are horrible people. But the movement itself does not become delegitimized because people are making bad decisions or corrupt or just bad people at the end of the day. In every movement that has good purpose, there will always be actors in it that make bad choices. That's a fact. It's happened in every part of history. It's happened in every movement in history. It's happened in every single part of life because we are deeply flawed. Humans are deeply flawed. And it is not an apology. It is a reality. It doesn't make me think of Dolores Huerta as a villain. It also doesn't make me think of the movement as illegitimate. It's just unfortunate. That's just what it is. It's unfortunate that someone who seemingly had great purpose and a great reason to do good in the world ended up being such a shitty human being. But the movement itself should not suffer. Questioning the intentions that all of those people had, erasing the progress that movement made, is the wrong thing to do. Condemn the man, not the movement. Condemn him for his actions. Do whatever you need to do to find justice. I don't know what the right process or mechanism is to try to figure out the legitimacy of Dolores Huerta, although, to be fair, she had 2 children with him. And then those children are being raised by other people, I believe. So DNA tests would be able to prove that easily. In times like this, I think it's important. In times like this, I look at the discourse online, and I have this huge urge to try to give my 2 cents. And the only thing that I can think of is, I'm not sure. I mean, with the exception of the right-wingers, right? Like, the right-wingers are trying to defend a rapist, and, you know, that, to be fair, that's on brand, right? They've got a president on the Epstein list. But I just want us to be careful. The man does not make the movement. The movement exists after a certain point. It exists without the image, without his face having to be attached to it. The movement need not be tarnished by the bad decisions of one man. And I also want us to look at every single person that has any sort of influence, that has made any sort of desire to push progress forward. I want us to remember that we are all deeply flawed, and that this will not be the last time that somebody that we admire, we find out things about them that may not be pleasant. Hopefully not something to this degree of heinous behavior, but it may be something that's uncomfortable. And I don't think that we're ever going to avoid it. If we have the notion that the only way to make progress in the world is to be cookie cutter and perfect ourselves, then I think we are falling very short of what a realistic picture of the human experience is and of what progress can look like. And I know that those words are really difficult to try to internalize in moments like this when he is being accused of something very, very, very heinous. But I truly believe that even if somebody is at the forefront of a movement and you cannot, at the current rate of the movement spreading, you cannot detach the image of this person to the movement, I think it's incredibly important to realize that in the same way that we should not idolize politicians, that we should not hold them as celebrity status, we also shouldn't do that to activists. The progress that any activist is trying to make is bigger and more important than the activists themselves. And if they were a true activist, they would tell you that themselves. Because the whole point of activism is to help out other people, not to create an image for one person. You're supposed to push against the status quo for the betterment of other people, not for the image of one person. Because three things can be true at the same time. Cesar Chavez can in fact be a horrible human being for the things that he has done, and he could have also been absolutely integral to the farmers' unions and that entire movement at the time. And then lastly, him being integral in that movement does not mean that the movement should get torn down just because we find out he's a bad person. All of those three things can be true at the same time. And as uncomfortable as it makes us, I think it's important to realize the ideas of that movement are far more important than the poster child for the movement. And I genuinely believe that. So I actually have no problem compartmentalizing and just stripping him away as the poster child. I have no problem reconciling the fact that, yeah, he's a shitty human being. He abused his power and his influence. That makes him horrible. But I have no problem reconciling the fact that he was also incredibly important to that movement. But the movement is more important than him. So I will keep supporting farmers' rights. I only make this video because that seems to be a perspective that I haven't seen online that much. I have no interest in going back and forth of defending him or tearing him down. I have absolutely no interest whatsoever in trying to attack Dolores Huerta. I hope that there's a way to deliver justice to her and her conscience and her family. I hope that there's a way that we can continue having nuanced conversations in regards to that. I am not here for that, really. I wanted to make a bigger point about the movements that we support and how we really shouldn't get too attached to the poster children of those movements. Till next time, see you guys around. Peace.